So on the agenda for today, basically we're going to be covering a couple of things about the Level 3 Award in Education and Training. We're going to be looking at the sectors and the kind of jobs that it applies to, previous versions of the course, and how it relates to the education training qualifications. And there's not many combinations in the AET, but Tony can run you through a couple of options with the units that we give. Obviously, we're going to be focusing on the observed and assessed teaching practice, which is the Microteach in this case, because most of the questions that we've been getting recently is, because different people are in different situations with their workplace or with being able to access other people for their Microteach, and everyone's worried about how we're going to be assessing, while we're at various stages of lockdown. So we'll be addressing that. And obviously, we're going to be going through the requirements for the course and the units and kind of examples of how you can go about answering the assignments and the different types of assessments. So running the session for us today is the wonderful Tony Lamsdale. Tony is a fabulous tutor for ELN. Don't take my word for it. You can read the fantastic 5-star reviews on our social media. So he does the AET, CET, and sometimes the assessor courses for ELN. He has been training since the mid-90s in both the private and public sector, with a variety of subjects, and even been on the boards advising for a couple of universities, giving lectures and so on and so whatnot. So wonderful experience, and it's going to be a very entertaining and interesting session to look forward to. So without taking up further time, Tony, over to you.
Thanks, Sana. That was quite a build-up. I'm going to have to try and live up to that now, aren't I? Goodness me, set up. First of all, it's lovely to see so many of you on with us today. I recognise some of the names. You're already students of mine, so welcome. And if you've never met me before, most of it's true. The good stuff is true. As Sana has said, we're going to really focus in on the Level 3 Award in Education and Training. It was previously known as PTLLS, Preparing to Teach in the Lifelong Learning Sector, but that name has been deprecated or got rid of for a number of years now, but people still recognise the course as such, so I guess it kind of makes sense to keep that within our descriptions. At some point we have people coming to us who've already studied elements of it, and that's what they recognise. And particularly in the employment sector, sometimes the world takes a while to move on with the
these are the top results,
catching up with things. So let's just think a little bit about this award. If you've already signed up for it and you're studying with us now, I'm guessing that you know what you want it for. But broadly speaking, we have a couple of groups of people come to us with this qualification, and the qualification itself is designed to cover both those people who've never had any experience of teaching in any sort of environment before, other than perhaps being taught, so as students. But it's also very common for students to come to us who have already been in an education and training role, and they just need the formal qualification to ratify their position or perhaps even advance themselves. So this qualification is very much designed for both of those demographics, if you like, and it can be used in pretty much any sector you care to mention. We have a wide variety of students studying with us at the minute. I have someone who's working for public sector in the fire service. We have health and beauty consultants, employment consultants, a wide range of people come to us wanting this qualification. It's very much an enabling qualification. The good thing about ELN and about the qualifications that we offer is that the awarding bodies that we work with are nationally, in fact, internationally known. And once you achieve this Level 3 qualification, it is nationally recognised. It's set to a very high national standard, and actually it transfers overseas as well. So if you were looking to do any work abroad, various countries will recognise this and be able to map it to their qualification structure. So really, there's a massive amount of advantage of studying with us and also going for this qualification, especially if you're looking to pursue a career in education and training, either sort of full-time or as an offshoot of what you already do. And that's the most typical scenario, where people are looking to add a little bit of training to their already existing portfolio. An example of that is someone in the health and beauty industry who is absolutely practicing this on a daily basis, but is now looking to teach others and enable others to deliver their products or solutions. So that's a little bit of a framework of the qualification and how you might approach it, who it could be useful for. If you're in any doubt, and you want a little bit more of a chat over this in this call or whatever, then please pop a question in. It's very hard to sort of list every single occupation that could be benefit from having this, but pretty much anyone and anything. ELN provide everything that you need to complete this qualification, from the learning materials which we host online through to the assignment templates and the structure for you to kind of work your way through from start to finish. So you're with us all the way, and we're with you all of the way, whoever your tutor is. And typically if it's an AET, it will be me. I'm available to answer questions, provide guidance, provide help. My role in this qualification is twofold. First and foremost, I'm your tutor, which is where the help and advice comes in. And secondly, I am the assessor. So I look at whatever work you provide and I measure that against the criteria laid out by the awarding bodies and the national framework. If you've met the criteria, then I will congratulate you and I will tell you why. And if you need to develop your answers, then again, my feedback is there to help you understand where you need to move to in order to meet the criteria. The qualification itself is made up of 4 units, and they're all mandatory. You have to complete and pass each one. And what we have here is 3 theory and 1 practical unit, and we'll talk all about those in a little bit more detail now. So we'll start by looking at unit 1, and don't worry, I'll summarize how best to approach each of these at a point further on in the presentation. But if we think about unit 1, it's all about the roles, responsibilities and relationships in education and training. And if you think about it, these roles define the structure, they define the learning program, they define the relationship between the tutor and the student, but also between the tutor and other agencies and organizations and people who may be involved in that learner's journey. So this is very much the focus. Now, this qualification itself actually enables you to teach any qualification that you are qualified in. So it's got a very broad approach. And what we like to see through all of your work is where you introduce what you would do or how you do things in your own environment. How does this theory, how do these roles and relationships work within the environment that you're in? So if we just have a little bit of a more of an in-depth look at this unit, what we've got here is core competencies, really. Once you've come to terms with the theory, you will understand all about the students that you're going to work with, their needs, and how to map those needs against the needs of the organization. Because that's also important. Whatever qualification you're offering, if it's local, well, you need to have a good idea of what that is. But if it's being delivered on behalf of another organization, you need to understand what their criteria for success is and be able to map that. So you're the bridge, if you like, between the student and the awarding body, the awarding organization. This will also start to focus on the importance of planning what you're going to do, both before you start to offer education, but more importantly, as you're working your way through your program and how to actually engage and motivate and provide things that are useful for your students. Excuse me. It's going to look at how you can deliver whatever it is you're delivering, to make it engaging and to really get the students bought into learning, and ideally start to take control of learning for themselves. So we're looking very much at the whole of, well, Unit 1 focuses quite largely on the teacher training cycle, which is all to do with the initial interview of students, the planning of your program, the delivery of it, how you evaluate the effectiveness of your session, how you assess how much your learners are actually benefiting from the course. As I said, the teacher training cycle. It also looks at some of the legislation that may be involved in teaching and training, things like health and safety, and anything specific to your industry, whether there's hazardous substances that you use, or particularly hazardous areas that you work in. Think about those firefighters, for example, the chap that's studying with me at the moment. Obviously, his training environment could potentially be quite hazardous. So we want to see you bring all of that into your learning through your assignments. We're going to be thinking also about how you create a safe space for those learners, going back to the health and safety. What does the classroom look like, or the training area, because not all training is conducted in a formal classroom environment. So if you're in a yard, a building yard, or a small building that's part of a bigger complex, how do you make that environment safe and welcoming for students? Because let's face it, if students feel safe, they're more likely to be able to engage with you and listen to what you're saying and buy into the course, rather than worrying about, well, is the wall going to fall down? Trust me, I have taught in some places that are really not great for teaching, and you can see learners kind of disconnect from that process, if that makes sense. Even just somewhere that's too cold or too hot can turn people away from what they should be focusing on. We will also look at equality and diversity and how you can include this in your sessions, and how you need to be mindful of these things. Setting an example, challenging behaviours, all of those things are an important part of this particular unit, and it's summarised at the end by thinking about also the other people that you're going to be working with as you take these learners through their journeys. Your role as a tutor is very well defined. It will be your responsibility to plan and deliver and all of the other things that we've just discussed. But there may be times where you're engaged with a student for whom you can't help in specific ways because your skill or experience doesn't extend to that. So if you think about students perhaps with some specific needs, that would be when you might have to turn to colleagues or other professional organisations to get support. It could be that your student is suffering from some sort of emotional issues, or possibly financial. Again, it's not within your remit to fix or solve those things. So what you can do is look to provide help and support to those students who may need it. And if you have that in the back of your mind at all times, it means that you retain the boundaries that are so important for engaging with learners and supporting them. You don't want to be kind of crossing over and getting involved in things that perhaps may not be helpful for either you or the student. So Unit 1 is very much setting the scene. It's giving you those core skills and that core understanding. The section in our learning material is very clear, but we also encourage you to go and do a little bit more research for anything. What I'm willing to bet with everyone who studies this course is that you will recognise some of the theory that is discussed, and you will see it perhaps even as common sense. Well, why wouldn't anyone do this in a classroom? Or why would anyone do that? But what it does do is provide you with the formal framework, if you like, the touch points that you can go to that explain why things are so important. Why should you do this in the classroom? Or why should you avoid doing this? It also looks at things like learning styles and behaviours as well. So that is Unit 1. Unit 2 is all about the inclusive teaching and learning approaches. So this is where we really start to hone in on how you bring students in and get everyone engaged. one of the first elements that's discussed is learning styles. We all have learning preferences. For me, I have a mix of preferences of how I like to learn, and a lot depends on what I'm actually trying to learn. As an engineer, I love getting my hands dirty with things. I love playing around, so practical demos, just building things, whatever it is. But before I even approach that, often I have to sit down and do a little bit of reading, a little bit of study. Not my preferred method. So sometimes you have, blended approaches. But before you can even start to put together a program, you have to understand what you're trying to deliver and to whom you're trying to deliver it. And within that, understand that everybody has a different way of learning. Some people like to read, some people like to watch videos, some people like to sit and listen. Some people prefer to actually try things for themselves. So it's always wise to have a view in your mind of what sort of strategies you're going to have for making your learning interesting, and also to cover all of these different learning types. Things like, do I do a presentation? Is it going to be a lecture? I hope not. Is it going to be a video, a demonstration? Are you just going to set some students some task work or some assignment work to do? Let them go away and lead their own learning. Are they going to do it individually or in pairs or in bigger groups? All of those things can come into effective teaching and learning, and this is what we want you to consider when you're putting together your programs. Don't just do it the same way that it's always been done, because there could be a better way. We'll think about making sure that the students at the heart of everything you do. This is called student-centered learning. It's all very well you standing up in front of a room full of people and sort of giving them the benefit of your knowledge and your experience and lecturing them, but that may not engage these people. How are they involved? How are they bought in? Why not bring them in, make them part of that experience, let them lead their own learning? So it also has to be appropriate for what the student is trying to achieve and within their capabilities. It is no good setting goals and targets that are beyond the reach of these people. So you have to think about how you're going to deliver things, what you're going to deliver, and build things up in a graduated way that mean that every time a learner takes a move, they're getting something out of it and building on what they already know. It could be that whoever you're talking to already has a great understanding of the types of things that you're trying to explain. They're just looking to push it to the next level. So it might be that you don't have to go right back to square one and talk about the whole basics, that you can come in at a different level. This might be termed recognition of prior learning, understanding what those students are already bringing to the room. An example of that would be if you're trying to teach someone how to drive, for example. Think about someone who's never driven a car before. Okay, they've never driven a car before, but they certainly have experience of the roads. So you can bring in what they already know and relate it to what they're trying to do. If you understand the concept of trying to cross a busy road as a pedestrian, or perhaps they've been a cyclist, they may even have been passengers in other vehicles before. So you can bring all of that in and help it to relate it to now what they're trying to do and the new skills that they're trying to achieve. Thinking about getting people involved and making sure that they're getting out of it what they want is absolutely critical in any sort of education and training. And what we're really thinking about here is bringing it all together, either under this sort of formal framework or possibly even something less formal, because not all training leads to a recognized qualification. It could be just a development exercise, continuing professional development. The other thing that we're very keen to focus on, and we should be giving our students opportunity to do, is to develop their core skills: English, mathematics, ICT, and also communication and being able to socialize with other groups. So one of the questions on this focuses in on how you embed these things in your teaching, in your training. Do you get them using computers, doing research on the internet? Well, that actually covers a couple of core skills there, if you think about it, because not only are they having to use ICT or technology to do the research, but once they actually get to it, they're having to read and absorb information as well, which is certainly pushing their English skills, their understanding, their listening, their reading, whatever it is. So we focus in on how you can bring all of these core skills and core elements into the various tasks and things that you do. Unit 2 really does build on Unit 1. You can do the units in our course in any order. For me, it makes sense to start at Unit 1 and build through to Unit 2, but as I say, you don't have to. Unit 2 itself, as a theory assignment, is standalone, but the second unit in this section is the Microteach, and this is typically the area that most people are, I think I can safely use the word afraid, nervous, apprehensive, describe it how you will. We break it down into very manageable chunks. Broadly speaking, 2 sections to it. The first thing you have to do is watch some videos of other people training. We've got 3 short clips, 15, 20 minutes, and look at these people's styles, their behaviors, what they're trying to do, and work out for yourself how well they're doing it and provide feedback. The feedback just stays between you and whoever your tutor is, but we want you to start looking at what goes on in the classroom with a professional eye to understand, well, what works in certain situations, what could I do? Is there something that I've just seen that I could consider bringing into my own teaching and learning, or is there something that I would never consider doing? So don't forget, not all solutions work for every single situation that you're facing. So it's important to understand what you're trying to do and then work out the best way to get it across. So those 3 videos form the first bit. Then what you have to do is plan and deliver your own session. Now, this is where some people start to get a little bit nervous, and rightly so. If you have never delivered any sort of education and training before in your life, it's a daunting thing to walk into a room with people who are watching and waiting for you to do your thing. Our sessions, or the session that you will have to produce, is 15 minutes. And really that 15 minutes it's specific. It doesn't seem like a long time unless you think about the fact that you may have never done anything like this before, in which case 15 minutes will seem like a lifetime. If, however, you're very experienced and you've been running sessions of your own, you may say, well, hold on, 15 minutes, that's not long. And you're absolutely right, it isn't. 2 of the biggest problems with education and training are either that somebody offers a session on a specific subject and students go along, they sit down very attentively listening to something, but it wasn't what was advertised because the tutor has gone off at a complete tangent with no good reason. So not delivering what's advertised is one big problem. But the other thing, and the far more common thing, is it's a 15-minute session and 30 minutes later everybody's still sat in the classroom going, well, we should have finished 15 minutes ago and I had places to be. 15 minutes is not long. So what it does do is it forces you to think very carefully about what you've got to deliver, how you're going to deliver it, and stick within that time. Because if you cross over the boundary of either not delivering what you've promised or overrunning, your students disengage. The minute you go off track, you've lost them. As I said before, if you've never done anything like this before, 15 minutes will seem like a lifetime until you start speaking, and then it all runs away with you. So this skill of planning and delivering to plan is absolutely critical, fundamental. I cannot stress how important it is, because without adherence to this, you will lose students. The way to approach this is to come up with your plan first, make it as detailed as you like, but try and pick a subject that's fun or engaging or interactive. You can pick any subject you like. It doesn't have to be what we might call professional. If you're in the health and beauty industry, it doesn't have to be anything to do with this. It has to be something that you're bought into and that you think, yeah, I can make some fun out of this. I've seen a variety of different sessions over the years. I've seen waxing, sticking with the nail and beauty, the health and beauty. I've seen eyebrow tints and nail shaping. I've seen how to strap someone into a stretcher to do a high-rise rescue. I've seen hand massaging. I've seen yoga, the lot. So the spectrum is broad, you know, go crazy, make something up, be fun with it, but make it interactive, because what you have to do is deliver this session to 3 adults over the age of 18 for obvious reasons, because we need this session recorded. So use your mobile phone, use your laptop, whatever you've got, you know, a digital camera, record the session, because once it's all done, I need to be able to review it, or whoever your tutor is. So you send it in to us, attach it in, we look at it and we give you feedback. You also need to get feedback from your students and write a self-evaluation on the session. How do you think it went? Could you have done anything differently? One of the key things that we're trying to promote through this course is people taking control of their career and constantly looking for ways to possibly improve, but maybe do things differently, because teaching, like any other discipline, requires a variety of skills and experience. You need a toolbox of things that you can dip into for various situations. If all you ever do is the same thing in the same way multiple times, you will be bored, and so will your students. So it's always good to have a variety of things that you can do, just to keep it interesting and fresh for you, but also in terms of broadening your skills, growing your skills. Teaching, like a lot of things, is all about confidence. If you've got the confidence, you can go into a room full of people, it doesn't matter how many they are, and you can deliver. One of the most exciting but also challenging experiences for me, I ran a workshop in London, a university, one of the universities in London, and we went along. I'd been booked to deliver an hour's workshop to 300 plus people in tiered seating. We had a great plan. I had a team of about 5 or 6 people with me. We went in, we ran the workshop. It was absolutely amazing. The hall was buzzing. And then the organisers turned around and said, we've made a bit of a mistake. It should have been a 2-hour session. I filled the hour, not a problem. I did it slightly nervous underneath, but I had this toolbox of ideas. And also, as you've probably already gathered, I don't mind talking. But these are the skills that you need to build as you go through your career. One way of building skills is by trying things, reflecting on how well it worked. Is it something I can do again? Is it something I can develop? Or is it something I should put to the back of the cupboard and forget I ever tried because it just didn't work? All of those things are really important for all of us as professionals. Once you've got your session recorded, filmed and reviewed, you get your feedback from your students and your own, you're pretty much done with this unit. Now, one of the questions that is current at the moment is due to the COVID-19 situation. Well, I don't want to get in a room full of people, 3 people. How can I do the social distancing? I don't want to put anyone at risk. I don't want to put myself at risk. And we absolutely understand that. You may have heard of Zoom or other sort of social media interaction meeting things. Why not use a Zoom session? At the moment, this is still acceptable. Record a session, as long as we can see you and your students. And of course, if you've got anything that offers you multiple camera views at the same time, that will be acceptable for your 15-minute session. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But believe me, it is still possible to get this done. And if you'd rather not use Zoom and you'd rather do the face-to-face live scenario thing, then that's fine. We can always defer that section until things ease and the situation becomes a lot safer for everyone. So that's the Microteach. The Last assignment, the fourth, the unit 3, is all about understanding assessment in education and training. And this is, you need to think of assessment as a separate activity to teaching. Assessment runs through teaching at every stage. We have what we call initial assessment, where we get to know our students, understand who they are, what their background is, what qualifications do they have, all of those things. Initial assessment is important for building our teaching, building our plans and our sessions. We then have to make sure that we can have continuous assessment throughout the learning to make sure that students are understanding and getting what we're trying to convey to them, and that they're actually building skills and getting something out of the session. This is what we call formative assessment. And then at the end, presumably there's some sort of qualification. Maybe there's an exam to pass, maybe it's based on portfolio of evidence, as is the AET, or maybe it's something else, but you have to be able to assess that. Now, the role of the teacher includes assessing, but assessment as a separate activity is also something that is in within the remit of qualifications that we offer. This introduction to assessment, unit 3, understanding assessment and education and training, is the kind of foundation level, if you like, where we look at what form of assessments there are available to you, how you go about it. It could be through questions and answers, it might be an exam, it could be an oral exam, it could be something more practical based. When I was an engineer studying for my qualifications, not only did I have to sit exams, but I also had to make things, and put the skills that I was learning in the classroom into practical use and produce things to, engineering tolerances. Quite exacting. In fact, it felt like I was being examined every single day that I was actually doing my studies, which took 10 months. I consider that now to be perhaps a little bit of it was quite onerous, let's put it that way. And I think these days there's much more focus on the learner. I hesitate to use the phrase making it fun, but I think engaging is something we should try and do. We shouldn't be putting people under undue pressure to achieve. So this is where your assessment has to be very, very carefully considered. You've got to understand what you're trying to assess, how you're trying to assess it, who you're trying to assess. Think of what's going on at the minute. The students that have been studying for years for their GCSEs, and this year there is no exam. Well, those students are now going to be assessed based on prior work. Their grades and their levels are all being input as I speak, and that will determine their results. Many students, I'm sure, will be quite relieved that they haven't got to go into a class, a hall and sit and do several hours of exams multiple times to determine their future, but others will have been absolutely loving it and couldn't wait. So we're all different and we all see things differently, and you as the assessor or the tutor have to think very carefully about what you're trying to achieve at the end of it. There's a lot of our questions where we ask you to do a comparison of the strengths and limitations of various techniques, because if you understand what works for some and not for others, you can then build up a blended method of sorry, I forgot to move the slide on there, didn't I? That's just age, it happens. If you understand what works in certain situations, you can build it in or you can remove it from your plan depending on the need. The other sorts of things that we look at are the importance of record keeping, GDPR, making sure that everybody's details are safe and secure, making sure that you've got adequate records of achievement and attendance to prove as a student goes through their career with you that they've met whatever standards there were, or conversely not met. Because if you have a student who you deem not to have passed the course, it's important to be able to justify your decision. Why haven't they been able to achieve what they wanted to? What went wrong? Was everything fair and proper? Was it upheld as per the standards of the qualification and the organisation that was offering it? We will look as well at some of the challenges that some students face when it comes to being assessed. I know many students who are absolutely terrified of exams. And so, you know, if you have to sit an exam for a certain qualification, what can you do to make it as structured and, dare I say, painless as possible? You also have to think about the rules that govern exams and assessments. How are you going to make sure that there isn't any cheating? How are you going to make sure that whatever the work a student provides is their own? Is it enough to say that they've met the qualification? Is it current? Is it something that they've done now, recently, through the qualification, or is it something that they've actually brought with them? And if so, is it relevant to the qualification that they're studying for now? So assessment, very important part of education and training, absolutely critical when it comes to determining the outcome. And also, as you go through the teaching, if you want someone to achieve a qualification, I would suggest it's best not to measure them in their entirety at the end. Take a view of how things are going as you go through, because if there is a misunderstanding or a gap in the knowledge, it's easier to address it as you're going rather than trying to go back and unpick it later on. So a very broad outline. We also look very much at feedback, how to give proper feedback, the timeliness of it. Is it constructive? It's no good, for example, to tell someone that they've done a good job without qualifying what good means, because how then do they know what to repeat? They could look at what they've done, I guess, and make some sort of arbitrary decision themselves. But the feedback that you get from me as you go through, if I think you've done a good job, I will tell you exactly why. Lovely, clear explanations. Excellent research. You've brought everything together really well using your examples. Whatever it is, I like to be very specific about why I think it's good, why I think it's met the criteria, because then you can go on and replicate it. Similarly, it's no good telling someone that they've done a rubbish job, because what does that mean? That could be interpreted in many ways. Well, is it all rubbish, or have I missed some points? So again, the information that you give has to be specific. Look, you've answered it in this way, but actually what we were really looking for was this. It's not about making it difficult for the students. It's not about making it an impossible challenge. It's about unlocking the learning for them through the feedback. Are you in a place where you can give feedback, especially if it's not good feedback? Can it be done confidentially and sensitively? Think about the feelings of the students. Some students accept feedback quite happily, not a problem at all. Others, it feels very personal. So what strategies have you got for making sure that the feedback that you give is both productive, but it's not a kind of an assault? It's friendly, it's helpful, and it's actually helping them build their skills, their knowledge, and their understanding. One of the things that we really push hard on this is including the students in the whole feedback process. Let them know when they're going to be assessed. Let them know what they're going to be assessed on. Show them how the assessment is going to be carried out and conducted. Because if you know what to expect, it's not a frightening thing. If it's not a frightening thing, you're more open. If you're more open, whatever feedback you get is more likely to be useful, helpful, and be absorbed, and therefore the learning will continue. Unit 3 is the final unit, and by the time you've got to the end of this, you really do have a great understanding of the skills and disciplines required to be a tutor or a teacher in the adult training sector. I've mentioned just before I started talking about the assignments, the best way to actually complete them. Many of you may not have actually written anything for a while or done anything in what you might call academic in a while. So my advice is always do your studies, do your research, look at the material that we give, do a little bit more research if you want. You know, we want to inspire people to go and find out more. Once you've grasped the theory, when you come to your assignments, and each assignment is laid out in a very logical manner, we put the questions in there that you have to answer. Read the question, relate it to the theory, and then use your own words to describe the theory. If you use your own words, I know that you've gone away, assimilated the information and turned it into something that makes sense for you. I am not expecting to read verbatim what you've read on the internet. I want to see what sense you've made of it. And the other great way of showing that you've understood something is by giving examples of what this theory looks like in your own training environment. So a combination of clear explanations using your own words, nicely structured, nicely formatted, and examples is really the standard that you're looking for to answer all of the questions. As I've said, extra research can help. We provide an awful lot. We also provide a reading list and website that you can refer to if you need a little bit of inspiration. I'm just going to go very briefly back over the remote assessment. All of your assessment is done online. You do your work, you submit it when you feel it's ready for review, or if you want your tutor to take a look at it and give you some guidance. The Microteach at the minute, as we've already said, actually getting into a live classroom with people may not be possible, may not be safe. I know certain businesses and offices and schools are going back at the minute, but there's still some pretty serious restrictions. So we do not want anyone to be disadvantaged or put in any sort of risk. So consider an online session using Zoom or some other digital technology, or wait until situations ease and you and your students are more comfortable. And when I say students, the 3 people that you need to pick over the age of 18 could be adult, any adult, family member, friends, or it could be work colleagues, professionals, because remember, this is an access to teaching qualification. So you may not actually have access to what we might call the formal environment just yet. If you want to know a little bit more about this, then there is a link. There's a blog on our website which describes our strategy and our policy. But you know what? If you want to speak to anyone about it, please get in touch and we'll gladly have a chat with you on a one-to-one basis so we can help you to work out what's going to work from you. So once you've gone through all of the assignments and the Microteach, you get to completion. Yay! We're done. Now, what happens is, as your tutor and assessor, I will have been reviewing and grading your work as it's gone through. I will always, we always recommend doing things in chunks. Don't write it all and then submit it all at the end. You know, work on unit 1, submit it, get that done, get it signed off, get it completed, because that's a confidence thing. Once you see elements of the work being completed and marked off, signed off by your tutor, it really does feel good. And I know that because I've been a student with ELN for 4 years. I've done 3 courses so far, completed and passed, and I'm currently studying my 4th. So I can see it from both sides. Once everything has been completed and marked off by your tutor, it then goes to our own internal quality assurance team, who go through everything, make sure everything is all as it should be. And your portfolio is then gathered and passed to the awarding organisation. ELN are a direct claim provider, so your certificate may just be issued without your portfolio being reviewed by the awarding body. The relationship that ELN has with all of the awarding bodies that we work with is absolutely first class. We are regularly audited twice a year by each awarding body that we work with. The feedback is always incredibly positive, because what they see is the support that we provide, the services that we provide, the materials that we provide is first class. And I know that because I've been on the receiving end of it as well. All of our tutors are interviewed by the awarding bodies where they pick portfolios at random to study. And I'd be lying if they said they never came out with anything, you know, or areas for development or improvement, but we uphold their standards. They know that when ELN issues a certificate on their behalf, the work that has been produced more than exceeds the standards that they're wanting, and therefore the students are the quality that we want to be putting out into the workplace. Once everything's gone through, you will receive your certificate in the post, lovely hard copy certificate with your name on, recognizing your achievement. And make no mistake, you have achieved something special. You have achieved a professionally recognized, nationally recognized, internationally recognized qualification that will open the door to a new career. That's the qualification in a nutshell. I'm willing to bet that we have a few questions. I hope that everything that I've said has made sense. I see that Sana is back online now. Just going to grab a quick drink. I seem to have talked for rather a long time. So shall we open up the floor for questions? Sana, are you with us? I see. I'm just looking through the questions myself at the minute because I'm not sure that Sana is with us to sort of moderate this. So I see that she's posted the link to the blog in the public chat. So please go and take a look at that, bookmark it. Nuno, I see that you asked, can we use Zoom? Yes, absolutely. I know that Sana's already answered it, but yes, absolutely you can. Zoom, Teams, I'm not sure if you can do things with Google Meetings, but just have a little look around there. If if there's anything you want to use, then feel free. It might be worth playing around with it a little bit beforehand if you've never used it before, because, well, I don't know about anyone else, technology I find can always let you down when you're under the most pressure and stress. I see that Lee is ex-forces. That's fantastic. Me too. That's where I first started my career as a teacher and a trainer, doing various bits and pieces. Anything else that we're picking up on? Doesn't look like there's too much else. Sana, is there anything you want to... Oh, she's just disconnected. Does anyone have any other questions? If you do, just type them in the chat. Sana.
Oh, hello. Yes, there you go. So I think I was unmuting myself, but it wasn't working. So sorry about that.
That's all right. I did wonder you were
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So sorry about that technical issue. So I had a couple of questions in the beginning of the chat and in the private chat as well. So if we just get going with that. So can I use this course for teaching apprenticeships? And I think that's linked to like the level of courses that you can teach if you do the AET, Tony.
Yes, absolutely. It's important to understand that this qualification is a qualification in teaching and training. Alongside the AET, you will need to be qualified in whatever you're teaching or training, and that you cannot train above the level that you're qualified in, if that makes sense. Did that make sense, Sana?
Yeah, I mean, so basically if you're doing the level 3, then you can teach the level 3 or below.
It doesn't necessarily map directly because certain industries have different levels within them. So engineering level 3 may not equate to teaching level 3. You know, it might be a level 4 or level. It just depends on what you're doing. If you look at some of the computing, level 5 computing isn't necessarily that higher level in certain disciplines. So the responsibility is on you to go away and look at what you're trying to teach and understand the level that you've got versus what you're trying to teach, if that makes sense. So there isn't always a direct correlation between an AET level 3 and a level 3 in some other industry or organization.
Fair enough. So I think the best thing would be to kind of look at your sector and maybe ask your employer or somebody.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Or go to the kind of awarding organization, governing body, and ask for guidance.
Fair enough. Okay. So if I'm not teaching, then how will I answer the questions? Or I think that's related to also, like, if I don't have learners, then how will I be able to do the qualification?
And that's a really, really good question. I can't see who posted that, but it is a really good question. So when I was talking about how to answer the answers, absolutely the theory is important and explaining it in your own words. If you can't use examples, what you can do is talk about what you would do in the classroom. So project it forward. Imagine that you are teaching, and how would you see this taking shape in the sector that you're going to teach in? Use your imagination. That's just as valuable as using examples.
Great. So write about what you would do rather than, okay.
What you actually do.
Brilliant. Okay, I think this is a really good one. Can you please give an example of a really good or a really bad microteach? Because I think some people just can't really figure out what topic to choose or what the microteach would contain.
That is an unbelievably hard question in many ways. The worst microteach I have ever seen was a student who talked for 15 minutes solid at 3 people and asked about 2 questions. That's the worst, and that's the only one I've ever seen. The rest have been brilliant in their own right. So if you think about the one that I saw from the fire service, he set himself an absolutely incredible challenge, because there was 8 minutes in the classroom where he was showing people how to set up a stretcher to do a high lift rise, and then about 7 minutes out on one of these towers that they use, actually doing the demo with the 3 students. Incredible. I'm not saying you all have to do that. I've seen the best microteachers that I've seen all involve the tutor doing a little bit of a presentation or introduction to what they're going to be doing, and then getting the students involved. Questions. What do you know about this? Has anyone got any experience of this? Oh, here's something. Pick it up. Have a little look at it. I watched one a few weeks ago. Someone was absolutely passionate about gardening, and they'd actually got lemon pips, and they were going to grow a lemon tree from lemon pips. So it was all about preparing the soil, preparing the seed. And they did it on Zoom. And what they did was, before the session, they sent out a little list to the 3 people that were going to be joining in remotely and said, right, you'll need this, 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 and this. And then they all got together virtually, and they all went through the stages together. Right, now get your seed, now do this, now do that. It really is up to you to kind of just use your imagination. But remember that you have got 15 minutes and no more. It goes by in an absolute blur. I hope that answers it.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, so there's a virtual course, the live AET virtual course coming up. So how much work is required outside of the 2 days of the virtual course?
So the whole purpose of the virtual course is to give you the theory in order to answer the 3 theory assignments. We will cover the microteach within the 2 days of the virtual course, but you will have to go away and write the assignments up outside of that. Now, how much, how long is something that I can't answer, because everybody is different in their approach to writing, their approach to doing assignments. We specifically don't put word counts in because everybody writes differently. For example, I have read some beautifully crafted answers that are incredibly short, and on first sight you think, doesn't look like much, but when you read it, the answers cover all of the key points. And similarly, I've written some very long things as well, because I don't have the craft of being able to distill everything down into a few words. I'm much more verbose. So everybody's different. How long that takes, it's a virtually impossible question to answer, because so much depends on circumstance, so much depends on commitment, and how easy it is for you to write things.
Okay,
I
great.
can't be more specific on that.
Yeah, but we do give you tutor support afterwards, and we will be giving you access to our e-portfolio system. So, you know, you will have the support to kind of get it done. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Sorry,
there's...
I was just going to say something else as well.
Yep.
It was Mark that put that in. I think the other thing to bear in mind is that, you know, if you've not done any writing of this nature for a bit, if you start with Unit 1 and just do the first 4 sections of question 1, which is broken down into 4 bits, and get whoever the tutor is to review it, that will give you a good benchmark and a good feeling. I always say, once someone's got the first assignment done, everything else slots into place. The rest becomes not easy, but more straightforward. So just because the first one might take you a little longer doesn't mean to say the remaining 2 are going to take that long. Sorry, Sana.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's a really good tip, actually. I'm really glad you mentioned that. Thank you, Tony. So this other question actually comes up quite a lot from various angles with international students as well as local UK students. So what if they don't have a specific, I think the website mentions A-levels, English and maths, or if they don't have, you know, do they need a formal English qualification? Is this a requirement? Can you just generally talk about that?
Yeah, no, but what you have to bear in mind is that your standard of English, both understanding, you know, reading and writing, has to be at the kind of A-level standard, because that's what we're looking for in your answers. We're looking for things that are expressed clearly. We're looking for things that are written neatly, with good formatting and no spelling mistakes, grammatical errors, that kind of thing. But remember as well that the kinds of software that's available now, everything has a spell checker, everything can check grammar for you. So just because English isn't necessarily your first language doesn't necessarily mean this is an impossibility for you. It may just take you a little bit longer to put things together. And one of the things that I, as a tutor, or any of our tutors will do, is try and help you come up with something that does meet the standard. So part of our feedback would be not only the answers that you've provided, but the way in which you've provided the answers. You know, is the English clear? Are your descriptions, you know, legible? Is your spelling and grammar up to standard? I hope that answers it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tony. I think most of the other questions have been covered. If you feel I've missed any of your questions, I'm really sorry. You can always get in touch with us and, you know, like Tony mentioned, book a call with a tutor one-to-one and get your further answers questioned. So we're exactly on the dot, out of time. So, you know, I'll let you go. I'm sure you're all busy and have other things to do. So just keep an eye out for the follow-up email. We'd love your suggestions and your feedback. Thank you for all the engagement. Thank you for all the questions. Thank you for being here. And there is also a discount code if you purchase the course. I think it's within 48 hours or something, but just check the email afterwards and you will definitely, a couple of people asked, you will also get the recording so that you can view it again. So that's it from me, and thank you very much. Tony, if you had anything else to say at the end?
No, just to say thank you all very much for joining in. Thank you for the questions, and I hope it was useful.
Brilliant. Thank you all. Thank you.
Take
Bye.
care, everyone. Bye.